So we are here this morning to bring attention and gain further support from the people of Pennsylvania and their legislators for House Bill 1684 that focuses on hands-free cell phone use in Pennsylvania. The first question of any legislative proposal is there a problem, and what are we trying to fix? So the problem I see, and I think many people across Pennsylvania and many legislators see, is the consistent distracted cell phone use while driving. We need to get the phone out of the driver's hands. And if you ask yourself, how guilty are you? How guilty may you be? Or how often do you see a driver next to you on the road or at a light, fiddling with their phone, having it up to their ear, or even possibly texting? Our first guest is Miss Eileen Miller.
Our story is a very tragic one. It goes back to July 5th of 2010 when our son was tragically killed by a grossly negligent, distracted semi-truck driver. My son gave me a kiss and a hug at 3 o'clock like he always did and said, "Mom, I love you, I'm going to a party." And he walked out the door, and I never knew that that would be the last kiss or hug that I would ever get for my son. Our whole lives were shattered in a second. It took 1 second for this to take my son's life away.
Baby Paul was just in my belly. Can you get in there? See? Up, and that's the hospital picture of baby Paul on August 3rd, 1988.
Paul was just a clinger. He was a mama's boy. And the one thing the reason why my husband didn't want to have kids, because he didn't want a whiner. And Paul was the biggest whiner ever. But I will tell you, Paul came on August 3rd of 1988, and to this day, my husband is the greatest father.
This is May 4th, 1990.
Hey, sweetheart.
That's Nicole.
When he had his daughter, he cried his eyes out because he's like, I have the $1 million family. I have a boy and I have a girl. And I never saw a man cry so hard in my life. He was so overwhelmed and enjoyed to have a boy and a girl. So every year, closest to my son's birthday, we do a benefit in honor of our son, Paul. We like to call it a celebration of life, and it's called the Paul J. Miller Scholarship Memorial. A lot of people who knew our son love to come and spend the day in celebration of his life for him. And as you can tell from yesterday, beautiful turnout. Every year we think, is this going to be our last year? You wonder after a while if your son's legacy and everything that he does, where it's going to go. And I think this year is probably the most money we made so far.
We do this every year at this time because Paul would have been 30 years old. There's not a day we don't think about him, but we pay this in memory of him, and this is our way of paying it forward for him to keep his memory alive and to save lives on our roads. And we give those scholarships and that in memory of him. So thank you again to everybody who always comes out and supports us. You never let us down. Every year we think, should we do this? Will people come out and support? Will people keep coming out? And by looking around, we see every year that you never let us down, and you keep coming and coming and coming. And we can't thank you enough from the bottom of our hearts for always supporting us in our efforts on keeping our roads safe and remembering Paul. Thank you so much.
My name's Elisa Ski, and my daughter is Margay Ski. My daughter was traveling home on her school bus on September 23rd, 2008, when a man in a semi-truck who was talking on his phone admitted in court that he never saw her bus and rear-ended them at approximately 60 miles an hour. There were 21 kids on the bus. 8 were injured. 1 was critically injured. Margay would be the only fatality. So when Margay was killed, I was at home The phone call came from the little girl that was sitting next to Margay, her dad. We were friends. And he called me and said that the bus had been involved in a crash. And I thought, it's a bus. Like, what could be so bad? Until he told me that the bus was on fire. And then I realized that it could be bad. I hugged her that morning to go to school, and I never saw her again. She didn't have a broken bone in her body. She burned to death. She was burned past recognition. You get that phone call from that corner, you think twice. You think twice. And I tell people, if you think it won't happen to you in your little white or black or gray or red or whatever you're driving, it happened to her in a big, bright yellow school bus with its lights flashing.
Today's July 14th, 1990.
Here it comes. Watch the ball. Go! He pulls it. What a base hit.
Yeah, as you can see, Paul was a great athlete. His thing of all things was baseball. He always was playing. He was always on the All-Stars. No matter what he did, he always played. He excelled well. He had a huge passion for the Yankees. This is when I knew he became a man. He was going to play for Lackawanna College when he got there. But he said, Mom, I'm never going to make it to the Yankees. He said, I really got to buckle down, and this is my real life now. I'm just going to stick to my academics right now, and I'm giving up baseball. I knew he loved the game, but when he said that to me, he's become a man.
She lost her son to distracted driving. Through our advocacy and came up, yeah, Joyce lost her son. Yeah, Thomas, so she's wearing my son's hat because she's really
I'm an Astros fan.
She's an Astros fan, but she's like, I gotta wear it for Paul today.
On February the 12th, 2016, I got the phone call that no mother wants to get. I was told that my son had been killed. And when the state trooper called me, my first question to him was he texting and driving? And he said yes. My next question, and I have no idea why I asked it, but I asked him if I could put clothes on to bury him. And he said no. This is actually a replica box of what he was buried in, because all I got back of him was half of that box, and then that's a picture of him, and that's his actual phone that was thrown from his vehicle in the crash. And I hand that box to people when I do the presentations, and I ask somebody, hey, do you text and drive? Somebody always raises their hand, and every person in that room that I'm doing a presentation to holds that box. I don't ever want any parent to feel that same pain that I feel. My son leaves behind 3 children who will never, ever remember him.
always, his whole entire life, he wanted to become a police officer. Right out of high school, he went into the police academy. In September, he had switched all his credits into the criminal justice with the hopes of always coming back to that. And that's what brought him to July 5th of being killed on that horrible day. What happened is he was visiting friends at a party. He had stayed overnight. The next morning, which was July 5th, he was on his way back. And on his way back, the tractor trailer was seen off the road, on the road, back and forth, lane switching and speeding, and it was in a work construction zone. That tractor trailer was going this way, my son was coming this way, and he had all of a sudden jackknifed and tried to overcorrect, and then he crossed the two lanes, a grassy medium, and hit my son head on. He then pushed my son back into an embankment, and following behind my son was a van with 12 people. And then that van had then hit the tractor trailer.
My brother Neil had made that, but we put it way back far where nobody could see it because we don't want them, of course, to be distracted looking at it. It's just a way of saying a soul was lost there that day due to distracted driving, which should have never happened because it was 100% preventable.
Heavenly Father, we are grateful that you are a good father to us and that you love us and that you are here with us, Lord. You're not just looking down on us from a distance, but you are here with us and you want to pour your blessing out on this event, Lord. And I thank you for the work you've done in raising up someone like Mike, Lord God, out of terrible tragedy and loss to go ahead and begin something to ensure that others don't experience that same loss.
All right. Hi, brother. Love you. Back in 2012, my entire family was sitting around the living room, and we were all enjoying life as a family of four. And around 7 o'clock at night, my daughter Niki went out. She said, you know, see you guys later. We said we love you. She said I love you, and we told her be careful. You know, but let us know where you're going to be. Make sure you do the right thing, just like as always. Around 11:30 at night, my wife started panicking because my daughter Niki wouldn't answer the phone, wouldn't answer text, wouldn't answer the calls. My wife yelled down to me and said, you know, Mike, I'm worried. And I told her, don't worry, she's fine, she's fine. So basically what happened in the crash is they were right in our town on a local road, and they came up to an intersection. When they were coming up to it, the girl that was driving was on her phone, so she never saw the stop signs and went right through the intersection. At that time, there was a pickup truck was coming through the intersection on the other road and careened the car right where my daughter was sitting. The car spun, one of the passengers got ejected, and she landed about 60 feet from the car, cracked her skull wide open, tore her whole body up, but she lived and survived. The driver of the car didn't get hurt at all. She was on the other side of the impact, and my daughter was crushed in the back seat. She sat there for 45 minutes alive while the paramedics cut the roof off the car, and finally when they extracted her, that's when she bled out and died. At 2:30 in the morning, the doctors came out and they were all crying. We knew something was bad, so they came out and they told us that Niki had passed. I had to go in then. It was the worst thing a parent could ever do. I had to identify her body laying on a gurney, and the only thing I really get mad at, she was beautiful at the time. They fixed her hair, her face was perfect, there was nothing wrong with her, but they didn't take the tube out of her mouth, which to this day, that's what I see in my dreams. So my only memory now of my daughter is laying on a gurney with a tube out of her mouth, and that's all from a cell phone. So I guess the point behind all this is that we buried our daughter because of a texting driver, and we want this message to be, don't text, stay alive, do whatever you have to on the roads to be safe, because a car is a weapon. Now we're going to introduce someone who lost a son to distracted driving, and she's going to tell her story, and her husband's here too, Paul and Eileen. If you want to come up here and say hi.
Nobody should ever have to view your child at a morgue where his body is so unrecognizable that you can't even identify him. And I made it my mission that day, once I found out what happened to my child, that I would make change. And once we found that out, that's what we've been doing ever since. Nationally and locally, just like Mike. That's why I feel such a deep connection to Mike. Unfortunately, we don't want any more people to be like us, injured or killed.
The most trauma for me was probably the legal process. If I wasn't down there, every day statute of limitations was running out. I was always told he was never going to get prison time. I was always told he was going to get probation. And if I didn't have a great, incredible judge, he would have never got to prison. It's still 8 years, and you wonder when it's going to start fading, but it's obviously, he's not fading. He's still with everybody in their hearts. For some reason, every single time we do it, we get a little bit of rain, and I think that's my son smiling, tears of happiness, saying, "I'm here, Mom." Paul was just a very spiritual person, and all of his in-depth talks with me and him was about the world and what it comes from and who created it.
The importance of the congregation for the sacrament is that you all represent all of the Christians who have lived, all of the Christians who are living now, all of the Christians who ever will live, as you welcome Paul into the midst of the body of Christ. We are pilgrims in the sense that the holy place that we are going to is heaven. And in the Middle Ages, when the pilgrims made their journeys, they would carry a shell around their neck so that whenever they came to water, they could drink. They could go for days without food. They could not go long without water. Paul Miller Jr., I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
He always talked about God, and always talked about his spirituality, and always talked about meeting his Maker. And he did meet his Maker, and right now I firmly believe if God said to him, "Paul, you have a chance to go back to be with your family, or you could stay here," Paul would stay where he is, and he wouldn't come back. I feel like I'm kind of doing his work, just, he's up there guiding me, and I'm just doing his work, but it's still his work.
My son was so badly injured that I had to go to a morgue, and I couldn't even identify my son. I literally had to unzip a body bag and look at the clothes from the night before to view my child. And that should never happen to somebody's child. You should never, ever have to go to a morgue and identify your child to unzip a body bag and look at him. And I looked at my child and I whispered in his ear and I swore that I would find out what happened to him and fight for change. And since 2010, I've been fighting for better laws. And that wasn't the end of it. Within 2 years, my husband started falling, tripping, and walking into walls. And almost 2 years to the day of my son's death, my husband was diagnosed with ALS, which is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It's a motor neuron disease, which is a death sentence.
Now I watch my husband, who has a horrible disease, which we 100% believe my son's death triggered his ALS. And now I get to see my husband suffer every day, which is horrible, watching somebody suffer in front of you. And then we had my son taken away so quick. So it's very hard to watch.
Thank everybody again for supporting our cause. I opted not to speak as of this voice I got from ALS. But I'll keep fighting as long as you people keep coming back.
With that being said, I'm begging everybody to co-sponsor this bill, get it through the House, and please get it through the Senate, because every day it doesn't go through, more lives are being lost on our roadways. And you don't want to be the one to have 2 state troopers come to your door and tell you you lost a loved one. Believe me, victims up here, we understand. We lost our children. Thank you kindly. I appreciate it.